Now, what do you want to do? Do you want to live your life in such a way that you're always saying to it, you know? Do you want to? Is that a good way to conduct things? Or do you want to live your life in such a way that you say, come on, let's go. You see, let's swing this thing. On the one hand, you see, you're always in tension against it. Do you remember I pointed out to you in this morning that the person who's anxious, constantly anxious, is the person who is resisting the flip-flopability of things. Life is vibrating, it's going blip, 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 blip all the time, and the anxious person says, God's sake, don't do that. Because, you know, you might do it too much. I don't want to blip like this, it makes me feel nervous. Stop it. And so, as he puts his weight on this blip, blip, he goes like this, you see, it gets tripping. So instead of saying, come on, let's blip, see, let's go, and do this thing, so in exactly the same way, the person who wants to say, well, you're nothing but some kind of chemicals, and they're just a lot of, you're a bag of pus and blood, basically, with a few bones inside. And that person is doing the same thing, you see, as the person is putting pressure on the flip-flopability of things, and so he gets anxious. So one of the first stories is that when Bodhidharma, or Dharma, who you see all over Japan as the man with big eyes, a bushy beard, usually dressed in red with no legs, he came to where Bodhidharma was meditating and said, Master, I have no peace of mind. Please pacify my mind. Because he didn't even get in for a long time to ask the question, because Bodhidharma refused to see anybody. Finally, when he cut off his left arm as a token of his sincerity and presented it to the master, Bodhidharma said, you know, all right, what do you want? Well, he said, I have no peace of mind. So Bodhidharma said to this man, whose name was Eka, bring out your mind here before me, I'll pacify it. And Eka said, when I look for my mind, I can't find it. Bodhidharma said, there, it's pacified. Now somehow this answered Eka's question. And you'll see from the story that I told you that what happened was the disappearance of the problem. Because Eka, when he looked for his mind that was giving him so much trouble, couldn't find it. Now then, these stories go on in the most amazing ways. And I might retail a few, although some of them may be familiar to you. I'll try and choose ones that are probably less familiar. Then there was another monk whose name was Gute. And whenever people came to ask him questions about Buddhism, he'd hold up a finger. That was the only answer he'd give. Well, he had an attendant. And one day, somebody came to the temple to inquire about the teaching being given there. And the master was apparently out, and his attendant was there. So the investigator said, "What is your teaching here?" And the attendant held up a finger. But actually the master had been there. He was peeking from behind a screen. And so he came out to this boy and said, "What's the fundamental teaching of Buddhism?" And the boy held up a finger. Instantly the master drew a knife and cut it off. And the boy was very dismayed and rushed away yelling. So the master said, "Hey, come back!" As he came back, he said, "What's the fundamental principle of Buddhism?" And he went to hold up the finger, and it wasn't there. And he was enlightened. There was a master walking in the forest with a group of his disciples. And suddenly he picked up a tree branch and said to one of the monks, "What is it?" And the monk hesitated, didn't answer immediately, so the teacher hit him with it. So he turned to another monk and said, "What is it?" And the monk said, "Give it to me so that I can see." And the master tossed him the branch. He caught it and he hit the master with it. And so the master said, "Well, you got out of that dilemma." there is a Chinese god whose name is Ping, and this is the god of fire. And there was a monk who was traveling, and he came to a new master. He had been to someone else, and he said, well, who did you study with before you came to me? Or he said, I studied with so-and-so. He said, what did he teach you? Well, he said, when I asked about the fundamental meaning of Buddhism, he answered me, Ping comes for fire. Well, the master said, that was an excellent answer, but I bet you didn't understand it. Oh, yes, he said, I understood it. Because Ping is the god of fire. And when, if Ping should ask for fire, that would be like me asking about Buddhism, because I'm really a Buddha already. The master shook his head. I said, I knew it. He said, you missed the point completely. Well, he said, well, how would you deal with it? The master said, you ask me. So the monk said, what is the fundamental principle of Buddhism? And the master said, Ping comes for fire. And the monk got the point. When another story is at a little bit different level. There was a very great samurai, no less than Miyamoto Musashi, and he was taking a ferry boat across Lake Biwa. And after he had got on the boat, suddenly a drunken samurai came bouncing aboard, and he looked at Miyamoto and said to him, "Ha! I see you're a samurai. What's your school?" And he said, "Mine is the no-sword school." He said, "Ha, ha, ha." The boat had begun taking off by this time and was going across the water. No-sword school, what a thing, what a thing. He said, "I'll try out your no-sword school." And he drew his sword and said, "Come on." And Miyamoto said, no, wait a minute. There are a lot of people around on this boat, and if we start fighting, somebody might get hurt. Why don't we go over to that island there, and we can fight there? So he said to the ferryman, "Row over to that island." And so they went over to the island, and this drunken samurai was all ready to get in the fight. And he jumped off the boat onto the island, and quickly Miyamoto grabbed the oar from the ferryman and pushed the boat out into the water. Left him stranded. And he said, "You see my no-sword school." another time there was a famous master called Suibi, and he was asked, what is the secret teaching of Buddhism? And he was asked this in the lecture hall, where other monks were studying. And he said, wait till there's no one around and I'll tell you. So later in the day, the monk accosted him and said, there's nobody around now. What is the secret teaching of Buddhism? So he went into the garden with this monk, and he pointed at the bamboos. And the monk said, I don't understand. He said, what a tall one that is. What a short one that is. And this awakened the monk. Whenever a questioner used to come to Sri Ramana, the great Hindu sage who died a few years ago, they said to him, Master, was I living before in a previous incarnation? And if so, who was I? And he would say, who is asking the question? Who are you? And a spiritual teacher in both Hinduism and Buddhism is a kind of, well, what he does to awaken you, to get you over the hallucination of being the skin-encapsulated ego, he bugs you in a certain way. He has a funny look in his eye, as if to say, come off it, Shiva, I know what you're doing. You say, what, me? And he looks at you in a funny way. There was once a woodcutter working in a clearing in a forest when he saw a strange animal peeking at him from behind a bush. And thinking to have this animal for dinner, he rushed at it with his axe. And the animal laughed from the opposite side of the clearing, because this animal had the power to read thoughts. And therefore, wherever the woodsman intended to go, the animal read his thought first. And so the animal began to talk and mocked him and said, "You think I'm going to be this place next?" Because the woodsman naturally thought, when I see him next, instead of going to where he is, I'll go to the opposite side of the clearing. And so this went on until the woodsman got absolutely furious, and he returned to chopping the wood. And the animal laughed and said, "So you've given up." And just at that moment, as he whanged the axe against the tree, the head flew off and struck the animal dead. That's the way you have to attain Zen.
The most dangerous graven images are not those which are made of wood and stone. They are those which are made of ideas. And it is well known to the great mystical tradition of the world, all over the world, that the sort of supreme vision can only come when you have got rid of every idea of God whatsoever. It would be like, as I've often used this image, cleaning a window on which somebody has painted blue sky. Well, to see the sky, you've got to scrape off the paint.
Why are you trying to be unselfish? Well, the answer is I want to be on the side of the big battalions. I think it's going to pay better to be unselfish than to be selfish. Well, Luther saw that. But there it is. Because what he's done, you see, he's beginning to make you see the unreality, the hallucinatory quality of a separate self. This has merely conventional reality in the same sense as lines of latitude and longitude, the measurements of the clock. That's why one of the meanings of Maya, illusion, is measurement. Things, for example, are measurements. They are units of thought, like inches are units of measurement. There are no things in physical nature. how many things is a thing? And it's any number you want. Because a thing is a think, a unit of thought. As much of reality as you can catch hold of in one idea. When we have the concepts of mind and matter working separately, both are impoverished. Mind becomes vague, kind of gas, psychic gas, and matter becomes mere stuff. And how these two ever influenced each other, nobody ever could decide. Because all properly behaved ghosts walk straight through brick walls without disturbing either the bricks or the ghost. And so how can a mind incarnate in a material body move that body in any way? This was always a puzzle. When you try to think of matter as mindless, or mind as immaterial, you get a kind of a mess on both sides. The idea that man can be an objective observer of an external world that is not himself, so that, as it were, he can stand back from it and look at it and say, what is out there? We see that this cannot be done. We can approximately do it, but we cannot really and fully do it for two reasons. One, the most important reason, is that the biologist will show us very clearly there is no way of definitively separating a human organism from its external environment. The two are a single field of behavior. when you wake up to this and realize that you are really a playing of this one energy, and there is nothing else but that it is you, but that for you to be always you would be an insufferable bore. And therefore, it is arranged that you stop being you after a while and then come back as someone else altogether. And so when you find that out, you
All you are doing is you're destroying an idol. And all idols must be destroyed respectfully. Not like those wretched Puritans who went around destroying all the saints' figures and the stained glass in the medieval churches. That was disrespectful iconoclasm. Respectful iconoclasm would be, for example, every Easter Sunday the Bible should be ceremoniously burned. Because if Jesus
The prayers of the Christian church are full of the idea, O Lord, we are not worthy, and since it is only of thy great mercy that we continue to survive at all, we humbly beseech thee, etc., etc. Imagine going around with that feeling about the nature of reality, that it is watching you all the time, that you're always on probation, like a released prisoner. And therefore there is an all-seeing eye at every moment of the day and night surveilling you, much more efficiently than any big brother could watch you through tiny TV cameras in your bedroom. I know a friend of mine who is a devout Catholic, and in her toilet, but she is different, she has a sense of humor. And in the toilet, you know, it's an old-fashioned one with a tank and a pipe coming down to the john. And there's a little placard on it with a big eye painted. And in Gothic letters underneath it, it says, "Thou, God, seest me." Let's suppose that you have some difficult and distressing habit, like drinking too much. And you're assured that once you've become the victim of this habit, it's an extraordinarily difficult thing to get rid of it, and it requires intense willpower. And so that kills you right off. You're a dead duck from then on. It's as if you had said to the devil one morning, "Look, I'm going to get rid of you. I'm not going to have anything to do with you anymore." So the devil, who is an archangel and is terribly clever, is all set for you. And because he knows that you are getting out of his way, he surrounds you with greater temptations than you ever imagined. If you are going to outwit the devil, it's terribly important that you don't give him any advance notice. Even if you serve notice privately on yourself that suddenly you're going to drop it all, already the devil knows, because who do you think the devil is? And eventually you get like the ancient Romans, who had all these mad crowds of barbarians who had to go every Saturday to the Colosseum for a show that really had to surpass everything. Because they had public baths, they had prostitutes, they had every kind of luxury. But when they went to see where it shows all these beings in states of torture. Now, of course, the priests say, when they're bringing up children, if you do bad things, you will end up in the hell world. But this is a very inadequate way of showing how one gets to the hell world. You get to the hell world as a result of not knowing what you want. As a result of thoughtless pursuit of pleasure, which ends you eventually in the pursuit of pain. So when you're in the hell world, that's where you want to be. Understand, first of all, that you don't want absolute power. You don't want absolute control. You want, yes, some control. So then, we ask the question, if the motivation of power gaining disappears, you've seen through it and you know that's not what you want, what other motivation takes its place as the origin of actions? And it seems to me that the answer here is compassion. in giving away the control, you got it. You got the kind of control you wanted. That's to say, where you had a loving relationship to the world, but you didn't have to make up your mind what it should do. You let it decide. The more, therefore, you relinquish power, trust others, the more powerful you become. But in such a way that instead of having to lie awake nights controlling everything, you do it beautifully by trusting the job to everyone else. And they carry it on for you. As William Temple once said, God is interested in many other things than religion. Were God only interested in religion, the world would consist of nothing but church buildings and Bibles and clergymen. And that would be pretty boring. So, in the culture that we call materialistic today, we are, of course, bent on the total destruction of material and its conversion into junk and poisonous gas as quickly as possible. This is not a materialistic culture, because it has no respect for material. And respect is, in turn, based on wonder, on feeling the marvel of just an ordinary pebble in your fingers. So, I'm afraid, you see, for the God is dead theology. Now you see, it must be understood that the crux of the Hindu and Buddhist disciplines is an experience, not a theory, not a belief.
What about evil? Are we to make the ground of being responsible for evil? And we don't want to do that because we want to keep God's skirts clean. In spite of the fact that our own Hebrew Bible says, I am the Lord, there is none else. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things.
Isn't it funny now how we've forgotten that?